My name's Robert Thompson, I'm 80 years old, and for 6 months I lived in complete silence. Not by choice, but because the words simply disappeared from my mouth as if they had lost their way back. Today, sitting here on the porch of my house in Lincoln Park, Chicago, watching Golden, that's what I named my golden retriever companion, running through the backyard. I still get emotional remembering how we got here. Before everything began, I was a different man. For 55 years, I was married to Margaret Sullivan, my life companion, my confidant, my best friend. We were that type of couple who still held hands while walking through Lincoln Park Zoo, who shared the day's secrets during dinner and planned each weekend as if it were a small adventure. We lived in this same house since 1975, a simple but cozy two-story home in Lincoln Park. Margaret had transformed every corner into a little piece of paradise. The backyard was her pride, red roses, jasmine that perfumed summer nights, a small herb garden where she grew fresh basil and rosemary for our Sunday dinners. She had the gift of making any space pulse with life. I worked for 40 years as an accountant at a construction company. It wasn't my dream job, but it gave me stability to raise our two children, Michael and Patricia. Michael now lives in Denver. He's an engineer and has two kids who are the joy of my life, even from a distance. Patricia stayed here in Chicago. She's a teacher and was always our closest link, especially after retirement. Sunday mornings were sacred in our house. Margaret would wake up early to prepare the pancakes she learned from her grandmother, while I read the newspaper on the porch, always accompanied by the smell of fresh coffee. She would hum old Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald songs while cooking, and I pretended not to pay attention but actually memorized each one of those melodies that filled our days. During the week, we had our established routine. I got up at 6 in the morning for a walk in Lincoln Park, while she preferred to do her physical activities in the afternoon with the senior center group from the neighborhood. We always had dinner at 7 sharp, watched the evening news, and afterwards she would knit while I solved crossword puzzles. They were simple moments, but full of complicity. If you're enjoying this real and touching story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow other emotional stories like this one. Weekends were for the children and grandchildren when they came to visit us, or for small trips we took around the Midwest. Margaret loved discovering small towns, and I enjoyed photographing every detail that caught her attention. We had entire albums dedicated to these getaways, each photo accompanied by a small story written by her. As the years passed, especially after celebrating our golden anniversary, we began talking more about the future. Not in a morbid way, but with the naturalness of those who know that life is a cycle. "Robert, if something happens to me first, do you promise you'll keep living?" she asked me one night after returning from a dear friend's funeral. "Nonsense, woman. We're going to leave together, hand in hand at 95, I replied, kissing her forehead. How wrong I was. Cancer came stealthily. Disguised as a cough she insisted was just a badly treated cold. When I finally convinced her to see a doctor, it was already too late. 6 months. That's what they gave us. 6 months to say goodbye to 55 years of love, complicity, shared dreams. During treatment, I tried to be the strong husband she deserved. I took her to all appointments, organized the house to receive medical equipment, learned to prepare the light soups she could swallow. But inside, I was falling apart. Each day that passed, I saw a piece of her saying goodbye, and along with it, a piece of me was dying too. Margaret passed away on a Tuesday in March during the spring of 2023. She was holding my hand when she fell asleep forever. The last words she said to me were, "Thank you for making my life so beautiful, my love. Now you need to keep making yours beautiful too." At that moment, I still didn't know those would be the last words I would truly hear for a long time. The funeral was a dignified farewell for someone who lived with such dignity. The church was too small for so many friends, neighbors, former students of hers who came to pay their respects. Michael and Patricia stayed by my side during the entire ceremony, but I felt disconnected from everything, as if I were watching someone else's life. When I returned home after the burial, the silence hit me like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of her. Her perfume still filled the air, her slippers remained beside the bed. The unfinished knitting stayed on the living room chair. The house was physically the same, but had become a mausoleum of memories. It was at that moment that something inside me began to close. First were the tears that dried up. Then the appetite disappeared. Next, interest in everyday things faded away. And finally, on a day I can't pinpoint exactly when, words simply refused to come out of my mouth. The silence began gradually, like a fog that takes over the landscape without us realizing exactly when everything turned gray. At first, I still answered Michael and Patricia's calls with monosyllables, "Yes, no, I'm fine," after a few weeks. Even those short words seemed too heavy to come out of my throat. Patricia was the first to realize something was gravely wrong. As a teacher, she had a trained eye for identifying when someone was closing themselves off from the world. "Dad, it's been 3 days since you've said a complete word," she observed during one of her visits, sitting at the kitchen table where Margaret used to serve afternoon coffee. I remember trying to respond, opening my mouth to reassure her, but it was as if the words had been replaced by some kind of heavy cotton that blocked any sound. It wasn't that I didn't want to talk, I simply couldn't. It was as if my brain had forgotten the path between thoughts and voice. The days became a monotonous succession of empty hours. I woke up at the same time at 6 in the morning, by force of habit from decades, but remained in bed until hunger or physiological need forced me to get up. Breakfast was reduced to a cup of black coffee accompanied by some saltine crackers. Nothing else had flavor. The garden that Margaret loved so much began to wither along with me. The roses lost their petals, the jasmine yellowed, the small herb garden became a wasteland of weeds. Several times I positioned myself at the window observing that decay, feeling a strange connection to the slow death process that was also happening inside me. Patricia intensified her visits, coming every day after work. She tried to maintain one-sided conversations, telling me about her students, about the grandchildren's antics, about neighborhood news. I listened, understood every word perfectly, but was unable to respond. Sometimes she cried silently while organizing the kitchen, thinking I didn't notice. But I noticed everything, and that made my guilt even greater. Michael made 2 emergency trips from Denver to Chicago during this period. He tried a more direct, almost military approach. "Dad, you need to react. Mom wouldn't want to see you like this." His words made sense, but seemed directed at another person, not me. I had become an observer of my own life, completely disconnected from it. The family doctor, Dr. Henderson, who had been with us for over 20 years, made some house calls. He prescribed antidepressants, recommended psychotherapy, suggested group activities. I accepted all the medications that Patricia organized in a weekly pill organizer, but remained the same. The words stayed locked somewhere inaccessible in my mind. Don't miss the next chapters of this transformative story. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The domestic routine transformed into a silent and melancholic dance. I walked through the house like a ghost, touching Margaret's objects with the reverence of someone visiting a museum. Her hairbrush still had some gray hairs tangled in it. The red lipstick she wore on Sundays remained on the dresser, with the mark from the last time she used it. I spent hours contemplating these small vestiges, trying to relive moments that seemed to belong to another life. The nights were especially cruel. For 55 years I shared the double bed with Margaret. Now that immense space swallowed me. I tried sleeping on the living room couch a few times, but it was like running from myself. The emptiness pursued me regardless of location. A cruel insomnia developed. I slept for 2 or 3 consecutive hours, woke up with the feeling she was still there, and reality hit me again with all its violence. The neighbors, dear people who had lived with us for decades, tried to approach in the first months. Mrs. Carmen, who lived next door, brought homemade casseroles that she left in the refrigerator during her visits. Mr. Antonio from across the street offered help with small home repairs, but my inability to respond, to thank appropriately, began to create a natural barrier between us. Patricia hired a housekeeper, Mrs. Maria, to come twice a week. She was a gentlewoman, accustomed to working with elderly people who respected my silence without asking uncomfortable questions. She just did her work humming softly, organizing the house with the care of someone who understands that each object has its story and special place. It was during one of those Tuesdays that Mrs. Maria made an observation that echoed in my head for weeks. "Mr. Robert, the house is clean and organized, but it seems like it has no life. It's as if it's waiting for someone who will never come back." Her words were true and painful. The house really had become an immobile sanctuary, preserved in time, refusing to move forward. Michael and Patricia began having more serious conversations about my condition. I heard them discussing from the room about the possibility of a nursing home, about the need for more intensive psychiatric care, about how worried they were and how helpless they felt. The guilt I felt for causing so much suffering to my children was almost physical, like a stone in my chest that made even breathing difficult. Dr. Henderson suggested we try animal therapy. "Robert, I've seen similar cases where the presence of a companion animal helped break barriers that medications and conversations couldn't overcome," he explained to Patricia during a consultation where I was physically present but emotionally absent. "It's not a magic solution, but it can be a catalyst for recovery." The idea seemed absurd at first. How could an animal do something that my children's love, medical care, and all medications hadn't achieved? But there was something in the suggestion that awakened a tiny curiosity, an almost imperceptible point of light in the darkness that had become my existence. Patricia embraced the idea with the hope of someone clinging to any possibility. "Dad, it doesn't hurt to try. If it doesn't work, at least we'll know we tried everything." Her words were loaded with a determination that touched me deeply, even amid my apathy. It was thus that after 6 months of absolute silence, we began considering the possibility of a new inhabitant for our empty house. I didn't imagine at that moment that I was about to meet someone who would completely change the course of my story. The decision to visit the animal shelter was made on a sunny Thursday in September. Patricia had researched for weeks about animal-assisted therapy and discovered that the Chicago Animal Care and Control, located on the South Side, had a specific program for seniors. "Dad, they don't charge for adoption. But they do an interview to ensure the animal goes to a good family, she explained while preparing a snack for us to take. I agreed to go more to ease her anxiety than from any real expectation. In recent months, I had learned that sometimes love manifests in small gestures of compliance, accepting a medical visit, taking medications on time, accompanying a worried daughter on an adventure that seemed meaningless. The car ride to the shelter was silent on my part, but Patricia maintained an optimistic conversation about the possibilities awaiting us. "Daddy, we don't need to adopt anything today. It's just a visit to see how you feel around animals." She drove carefully, looking at me through the rearview mirror at every traffic light, as if fearing I might disappear. Chicago Animal Care and Control was located in a large area, with lots of greenery around. It had been about 8 years since I'd set foot in a place with so much life pulsing at the same time. Dogs barked in the distance, birds sang in the trees, there were employees chatting animatedly about daily care. All that movement caused me a strange sensation, not uncomfortable, but too intense for someone accustomed to absolute silence. We were received by Amanda, a young veterinarian with curly hair and a genuine smile, who explained how the process worked. "Mr. Robert, our goal isn't simply to hand over an animal. We want to create partnerships that benefit both the person and the animal." She spoke directly to me, not just to Patricia, which surprised me positively. During the tour of the facilities, I passed by various kennels where animals of all ages and sizes waited for a new opportunity. Some barked asking for attention, others remained quiet at the back of the space, still traumatized by abandonment or mistreatment. There was something universally recognizable in those looks, the same loneliness I felt, but accompanied by a hope I had lost long ago. This story is just beginning to reveal its most beautiful transformation. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a moment. It was at the third kennel that I saw him for the first time. A medium-sized golden retriever, slightly disheveled golden coat, was lying calmly observing the movement. Unlike the other dogs, he didn't bark or throw himself against the fence when we approached. He just lifted his head and looked directly into my eyes with a serenity that completely disarmed me. Amanda noticed my immediate interest. "This is Rex. He's approximately 4 years old. He was abandoned 6 months ago when the family moved to a small apartment." She opened the kennel and Rex approached calmly, without excessive euphoria but with polite curiosity. He's especially gentle with older people. He seems to have a natural instinct for it. When Rex positioned himself beside me and gently rested his head against my leg, something happened inside me that I couldn't name. It wasn't an explosion of joy or a dramatic revelation. It was more like a door that had been locked for months had found its key. My hand, almost of its own will, descended to touch his silky head. Rex remained motionless while I made this first contact, as if he understood the importance of that moment. His brown eyes conveyed a deep calm, but also an intelligence that seemed to understand much more than I imagined possible for an animal. Patricia watched the scene with tears in her eyes, trying not to interfere in that silent encounter. "Would you like to spend some time with him in the yard?" Amanda suggested. "We have a space where you can interact more freely." I nodded positively. It was the first gesture of genuine agreement I'd made in months, not just compliance with others' wishes. The yard was a grassy area with some scattered benches and canine toys. Rex walked beside me without needing a leash, maintaining a pace that respected my age and physical condition. When I sat on one of the benches, he positioned himself at my feet, but not submissively. It was more like a companion choosing to share a quiet moment. We spent about an hour together in that first encounter. I didn't say a word, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel the anguishing pressure of having to speak. Rex seemed perfectly satisfied with my silent company, occasionally changing position or bringing a ball he found in the grass, without insistence when he perceived I wasn't interested in games. Patricia talked at length with Amanda about necessary care, about adaptation, about signs that the partnership was working. "Golden retrievers are known for their capacity for empathy," Amanda explained. "Rex specifically has shown during his time here exceptional sensitivity to perceive the emotional state of people around him when the moment came to decide." I discovered the choice had already been made without any conscious deliberation. Rex and I had established a connection that didn't need words, a communication based on presence and mutual acceptance. "I want to take him home," were the first complete words I pronounced in months, directed straight to Amanda. The astonishment on Patricia's face was evident. They weren't just words, they were chosen, intentional words, loaded with meaning. Amanda smiled as if witnessing something special. Not just a common adoption, but the beginning of something transformative. During the documentation process, Rex remained patiently by my side. When Amanda handed me the leash and documentation, he naturally accepted that I would assume his guidance. "You can call whenever you have questions," she said. "But I have the impression this partnership is going to be special. The trip back home was different from the way there." Rex traveled calmly in the back seat, occasionally putting his head near my shoulder as if wanting to remind me that we were now a team. Patricia drove with a smile she couldn't hide. making occasional comments about things we would need to get: food, bowls, a comfortable bed. When we arrived at our house, which now had become ours for the first time in months, Rex explored each room with respectful curiosity. He didn't touch anything, didn't get on furniture, just walked around recognizing his new territory. When he finally laid down on the living room rug, exactly in the spot where Margaret used to do her knitting, I felt that something fundamental had changed in the house's atmosphere. That first night, Rex chose to sleep in the hallway, in a strategic position from where he could observe me in the bedroom and also watch the entire house. He wasn't invasive, but clearly demonstrated he had assumed the role of companion and protector. For the first time in 6 months, I fell asleep without that suffocating sensation of absolute emptiness. The first week with Rex was like learning a new language, not of words, but of gestures, looks, and presences. He established his own routine that curiously began to influence mine. He woke up always at 6 in the morning, the same time I had maintained since before the depression, and came to the bedroom door with an expectant look that wasn't a demand but a gentle invitation to start the day. On the third day, when he repeated this morning ritual, I realized I was automatically getting out of bed without the resistance that had become habitual. It wasn't that I wanted to get up for myself, it was that someone needed me, depended on my presence for basic things like food and fresh water. This responsibility, however small, brought back a sense of purpose I didn't even realize I had lost. Rex had a particular way of eating that caught my attention. He didn't devour his food with anxiety like I imagined dogs did. Instead, he ate calmly, always leaving some kibble in the bowl as if wanting to ensure he wasn't being greedy or taking advantage. This gentleness touched me inexplicably and began to influence my own appetite. During the first days, I still didn't speak to him, but I discovered this didn't matter. Rex seemed to understand my nonverbal signals perfectly. When I walked toward the kitchen, he accompanied me discreetly. When I sat on the porch for morning coffee, he positioned himself nearby, but without invading my personal space. It was on a Sunday morning that the first small miracle happened. I was sitting on the porch watching Rex explore Margaret's abandoned garden, when he brought in his mouth one of the roses that had survived the period of neglect. He wasn't destroying the flower, he was offering it to me with the delicacy of someone who understands the sentimental value of things. "Thank you, Rex," I said instinctively, taking the rose from his mouth. They were the first words I directed to him, and his reaction was immediate, a subtle tail wag, a look that seemed to say, "I knew you were in there." At that moment, I understood he wasn't trying to make me talk. He was just creating situations where I felt safe to do so. Patricia noticed the gradual changes during her daily visits. "Dad, are you eating more?" she observed in the second week. It was true, I had begun preparing slightly more elaborate meals. Not for myself, but because Rex accompanied me in the kitchen and his presence made preparation moments less solitary. Continue following this transformation journey. Subscribe to the channel and share with those who need hope. The first walk we took was a memorable event. Rex had spent several days observing the world through windows, clearly accustomed to outdoor activities. On a sunny afternoon, I took his leash, which until then had only been used for quick trips to the vet, and saw his eyes brighten with expectation. We started slowly, just to the end of our street. Rex adapted his pace to mine, never pulling the leash or showing impatience with my slowness. When we stopped to rest on a bench in the nearby park, he sat beside me like an old friend, sharing a contemplative moment. Some neighbors I hadn't seen in months approached to meet my new companion, and I realized Rex served as a natural bridge for social interactions I had abandoned. "What a beautiful dog, Robert. What's his name?" asked Mrs. Johnson, who lived a few houses down. "Rex," I responded naturally, and only later realized I had maintained a brief but normal conversation for the first time in months. Rex seemed proud of the attention, but always returned his attention to me, as if wanting to ensure I was comfortable with the interactions. The nights began to have their own ritual. After dinner, Rex positioned himself near the armchair where I used to sit to watch television. Initially, he maintained a respectful distance, but gradually moved closer until, in the third week, he was lying at my feet while I watched the news. His calm breathing and constant presence made nighttime hours less haunted by memories. One of the most significant moments happened when I was organizing some old photos of Margaret. Rex approached curiously, and when I showed him a photo where she was in the garden, he looked at the image, then at me, and put his head in my lap with a gentleness that seemed to understand the importance of that moment. He didn't try to play or distract, he just offered his silent company. Her name was Margaret, I told Rex that afternoon, showing him several photos. You would have liked her, and she would have adored you. Talking about her to Rex was less painful than I imagined. Perhaps because he listened without judgment, without trying to offer consolations that couldn't change reality. Dr. Henderson made a follow-up visit at the end of the third week and was visibly impressed with the changes. "Robert, you're more present, more connected. How have you been feeling?" he asked, while Rex lay calmly near the table where we talked. "Different," I replied honestly. "I wouldn't say I'm cured, but I'm not disappearing anymore." It was an accurate description of what was happening. Rex hadn't eliminated my sadness or made me forget Margaret's loss. but he had given me back a reason to remain present in the world. Patricia noticed I had begun caring again for small details of the house. Not major renovations, but things like watering some plants that had survived, organizing papers that had accumulated, keeping Rex's bowls always clean and organized. It's like he gave you back your sense of responsibility and care, she observed. Michael called from Denver on a Thursday and was surprised when I answered the phone on the second ring, something that hadn't happened in months. "Dad, your voice sounds different," he commented. "It sounds more alive." We talked for almost 20 minutes about Rex, about the small routines we had established, about how I was feeling. By the end of the fourth week, Rex and I had developed a partnership that worked like a well-rehearsed orchestra. He knew when I needed close company and when I needed space. I had learned to interpret his different types of looks, the one that meant hunger, the one that meant wanting to walk, the one that meant simply "I'm here if you need me." The house began to have sounds of life again. Rex wasn't a noisy dog, but his nails on the wooden floor, his calm breathing, the sound of his bowl during meals brought back a sensation of an inhabited home that I didn't realize how much I had missed. The turning point happened on an October morning, almost 2 months after Rex's arrival. I was preparing coffee when he brought his favorite toy, a worn tennis ball he had found in the garden, and placed it at my feet. It wasn't an insistent or desperate gesture for attention. It was an invitation. For the first time since Margaret left, someone was inviting me to play, to be spontaneous, to rediscover lightness. "Do you want to play, Rex?" I asked, picking up the ball. His reaction was immediate. An enthusiastic tail wag, a body posture that radiated pure joy. I threw the ball to the back of the yard and watched him run with an energy he hadn't shown since arriving. When he returned, panting and happy, he deposited the ball again at my feet and looked at me expectantly. We played for almost an hour that morning. It wasn't just Rex having fun. I was really participating, laughing at his attempts to catch the ball in the air, celebrating when he succeeded. Patricia arrived for her daily visit and found me in the garden, sweaty and smiling, something that hadn't happened in almost a year. Her tears of joy were silent, but I noticed them. "Dad, how long have you been playing?" she asked, approaching slowly so as not to interrupt the moment. "I don't know," I replied honestly. I lost track of time. It was true, for the first time in months, I had been completely present in the now, without getting lost in painful memories or worries about the future. The changes began to accelerate naturally. Rex brought back not only my ability to play, but curiosity about the world around me. During our daily walks, which had become longer and more frequent, I began noticing things that previously went unnoticed. Changes in the neighborhood's architecture, new businesses, neighbors I didn't know. It was during one of these walks that we met Mrs. Teresa, a 75-year-old lady who also walked with her small poodle, Honey. Rex and Honey understood each other immediately, and our first conversation extended for more than half an hour. "I hadn't seen you around here in a while, Robert," she commented. "Rex is quite a companion, isn't he?" "Yes," I replied, watching the two dogs interact. "He brought me back to the world." They were simple words, but loaded with a deep truth I was just beginning to understand completely. If this story is touching your heart, subscribe to the channel and help other people find hope like Robert found. Mrs. Teresa became our first new friendship in almost a year. We began meeting regularly in the late afternoon for our companions' walks. She had lost her husband 5 years earlier and understood, without need for long explanations, what I had been through. "Animals have a wisdom we humans have lost," she would say while watching Rex and Honey play. "They live each moment as if it were special." Michael made a surprise visit at the end of October, and was visibly moved by the transformations he found. "Dad, you're different," he observed during lunch. I prepared for the first time in months to receive him properly. "It's not that you've forgotten, Mom, but it seems like you remembered yourself too." His words made me reflect on the process I was experiencing. Rex hadn't erased the pain of loss or made me forget Margaret. Actually, I had begun talking about her more frequently and with less suffering. Rex listened patiently when I told stories about our life together, as if understanding that those memories were treasures to be preserved, not wounds to be avoided. The garden began to revive gradually. Motivated by Rex's joy in exploring every corner, I began removing weeds, watering surviving plants, replanting some flowers Margaret loved most. Rex accompanied me in these activities, sometimes digging beside me, which initially worried me, but later I realized he was helping in his own way. "You're restoring Mom's garden," Patricia observed one afternoon while we planted new rose bushes. "She would be happy to know someone is caring for the things she loved so much." Rex was lying nearby, watching our work with the patience of one who understands that some moments require solemnity. The communication between Rex and me had evolved to an almost telepathic level. He knew when I was having a harder day and stayed closer, offering his comforting presence. On good days, he was more playful, as if wanting to celebrate with me the moments of joy. This sensitivity constantly impressed me and made me question how many nuances of life I had lost during the years of depression. Dr. Henderson made a follow-up consultation in early November and was impressed with the progress. "Robert, you're noticeably better. How do you evaluate Rex's role in this recovery?" The question made me stop to organize thoughts that were still forming. He gave me back responsibility without demands, I replied after reflection. He brought me back to the present without rushing. And he showed me it's possible to love again without betraying previous love. Rex, who was lying nearby, lifted his head as if knowing we were talking about him. The nights became moments of special connection. Rex had assumed the habit of lying at my feet while I read or watched television, and I began talking to him about the day, about memories that arose, about simple plans for the next day. They weren't one-sided conversations. Rex responded with different expressions, position changes, a more attentive look when certain topics were addressed. "You know, Rex," I said one night while leafing through an album of old photos, "I think you came to teach me it's possible to honor the past without being trapped in it." He placed his head in my lap, a gesture that had become our special way of connecting in the most significant moments. Michael and Patricia began commenting that I seemed to have found a balance between remembering Margaret with affection and building a new life routine. "Dad, you're talking about Mom in a different way," Patricia observed. "Still with love and longing, but also with gratitude and peace." At the end of the third month with Rex, I realized I had recovered not only the ability to speak, but the desire to communicate, to share experiences, to connect with other people. Rex had been the catalyst that brought me back to the world of the living, not erasing my previous history, but helping me write new chapters. December arrived, bringing with it a perspective I had lost long ago, positive expectation for the future. Rex and I had established a life routine that worked like a harmonious dance between two souls who understood each other perfectly. He had taught me something fundamental, that healing doesn't happen all at once, but through thousands of small moments of connection and presence. The most notable transformation wasn't just in my return to speech or recovery of appetite. It was in the quality of my presence in the world. I'd stopped being a passive survivor of my own life to become an active participant again. Rex hadn't just broken my silence, he had restored my ability to be truly present in each moment. Mornings became daily celebrations of life. Rex woke up with the same positive energy every day, as if each dawn were a new adventure waiting to be discovered. His contagious attitude made me rediscover small pleasures I had forgotten. The taste of the first coffee of the day, the smell of plants after a night of rain, the feeling of morning sun warming my face during our walks. Our social circle had expanded naturally. Besides Mrs. Teresa and Honey, we met Mr. Augustus, an 82-year-old widower who walked with his dog Lola every afternoon. We formed a small group of unlikely friends, united by mutual understanding of the losses we had faced and by the unconditional love our canine companions provided us. "It's interesting how dogs have the power to bring people together," Mr. Augustus observed during one of our group walks. "They don't judge our past, have no expectations about our future. They just accept us as we are today." His words resonated deeply with me because they described exactly what Rex had done, accept me completely, in the emotional state I found myself in, and patiently accompany me in the rediscovery process. Michael made his Christmas visit accompanied by the grandchildren, who were enchanted with Rex. Seeing my companion interacting with the children was a revelation about aspects of his personality I didn't yet know. He was gentle and patient, adapting his energy to the little one's rhythm, demonstrating the same sensitivity he had shown me in the first days. "Grandpa, Rex is very smart," exclaimed my granddaughter Sophia, 8 years old, after teaching him some tricks. "That's right," I replied, watching Rex execute simple commands with the dignity of one who collaborates by choice, not obligation. "He's special. The transformation you're following is real and possible for anyone. Subscribe to the channel and bring this hope to others who need it." Patricia organized a small Christmas dinner at our house, the first family celebration since Margaret's departure. Rex participated in all the preparation as a family member, receiving affection from everyone, and reciprocating with his calm and loving presence. During dinner, when we did our traditional gratitude circle, I stood up with Rex by my side. "I'm grateful for having found a friend who taught me it's possible to love again without diminishing the love I felt before," I said, looking at each person present. Rex didn't replace anyone. He gave me back the ability to be present for the people who are still here with me. The tears in my children's eyes were of genuine joy. That night, while organizing the gifts Rex had received, a new bed, toys, special treats, he positioned himself beside me, observing all the movement. "You know, you changed my life, don't you?" I asked, stroking his head. He looked at me with that expression that had become familiar, a mixture of affection, understanding, and dignity that seemed to say we changed each other's lives. Margaret's garden had bloomed again with renewed care and attention. Rex accompanied all gardening activities, sometimes bringing small branches or leaves as contribution. The roses were vigorous, the jasmine perfumed summer nights again, and the small herb garden produced fresh seasonings I started using in cooking again. "Mom would be proud to see how beautiful the garden is," Patricia commented one afternoon while we harvested basil. "And she would be even prouder to see how well you are." Rex was lying under the shade of the apple tree, watching our work with the satisfaction of one who contributed to that restoration. "Doctor, Henderson made his final follow-up consultation at the end of December and officially declared I no longer needed antidepressant medication. "Robert, you found your own therapy," he said, observing the natural interaction between Rex and me. "It wasn't just the dog, it was the ability you developed to care for each other." During the last days of the year, I reflected a lot on the journey I had traveled. 6 months before, I was a man who had given up his own voice, his own life. Rex hadn't performed a miracle in the supernatural sense. He had done something even more powerful, shown me that within me there still existed the capacity to love, to care, to be present. "You know, Rex," I said on New Year's Eve, while we sat on the porch watching the street movement, "you taught me that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry love and longing in a way that doesn't paralyze us." He placed his paw on my hand, a gesture that had become our special way of communicating in the deepest moments. The arrival of the new year was different from previous ones. Instead of fearing the future or clinging obsessively to the past, I was genuinely curious about what was to come. Rex had given me back something I thought I had lost forever, the ability to live one day at a time, finding meaning in the small daily rituals of love and care. Today, when I look back, I understand that Rex didn't cure my depression. He taught me it was possible to coexist with the sadness of loss without being consumed by it. He showed me that silence can be broken not by pressure or demands, but by the loving presence of someone who is simply there, without judgments, without expectation, just offering unconditional companionship. Our current routine is simple but rich in meaning. We wake up together, have breakfast while watching the garden, take our daily walks where we meet our friends, care for the plants, receive visits from Patricia and Michael, and end the day on the porch, observing the world we have returned to inhabit fully. Rex is now 6 years old, I turned 81, and our partnership continues evolving. He still brings his balls when he wants to play, still lies at my feet, or still looks at me with those brown eyes full of canine wisdom that taught me so much about unconditional love and true presence. Keep following real stories that transform lives, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any. For anyone going through difficult moments of loss or depression, I want to share what I learned. Healing rarely happens dramatically or instantly. It happens through small moments of connection, gentle responsibilities that bring us back to the present, love that demands nothing in return but our presence. Rex taught me we don't need to forget who we lost to keep living. We can honor the love we felt while building new bonds, new routines, new meanings. Life after a great loss isn't the same as life before, but it can be equally meaningful, just different. Today, while I write this story on the porch with Rex sleeping at my feet, I feel deep gratitude for having found someone who brought me back to the world of the living. It wasn't a dramatic salvation, it was a process of small daily miracles that gave me back my voice, hope, and the ability to love again. Rex didn't just cure my depression, he taught me that even in the darkest moments, there's always the possibility of a new dawn, a new connection, a new reason to continue. And sometimes that reason comes in the simplest and purest form possible. A pair of brown eyes full of unconditional love, a tail that wags when we come home, a presence that transforms an empty house into a home inhabited by life again.